r/AskReddit, which country has changed the most drastically in the last 50 years? Welp, I feel old. Well shit, I needed this PSA. You're not a good person, you know that. LOL. I would say Rwanda. Gained independence 60 years ago, half the population massacred 30 years ago, one of the highest rates of poverty in the world without access to the coast, transformed into one of Africa's biggest success stories in the last decade. Unbelievable transformation. Yeah, but let's not confuse this with calling Kagame a benevolent dictator. United Arab Emirates. Dubai used to be a patch of dirt. Still is. But now it's all shiny. Venezuela. My mother is from Venezuela and I grew up going there as a kid. It was a beautiful country. Stunning beaches and jungle. The people were the warmest and most fun I've ever encountered. Now it is a tragedy. Most of my cousins are gone and same with everyone else we know. We send basic necessities to the few families still there. Everyone I know has been a victim of at least robbery. I miss going there like crazy. I have such high hopes for it to turn around one. My list. Qatar, just check out GDP per capita, GDP, population, economic makeup etc. China, pretty clear. Vietnam, brutal civil war to where it is today. Iran, pre-revolution to today. Germany, was split in two, look at it today as heart of EU economy. The UAE literally wasn't a country 52 years ago and had one road. Good points, but West Germany was Europe's strongest economy long before it reunited with East Germany. In a positive way I would say China and South Korea. 50 years ago they were extremely poor and under brutal dictatorships. Now they're very strong economies, and they're not exactly beacons of democracy, especially China, but they're definitely doing something right. Negatively, Venezuela. They were the richest country in Latin America by a landslide and all of us were so envious of their success, and we all wanted to migrate there. Now, they're migrating to us fleeing hyperinflation and dictatorship. Not a single Uruguayan was envious of Venezuela ever. Singapore. 50 years ago its per capita GDP was about 15% of the US. It had just become a country less than a decade earlier. Now it is one of the richest, cleanest, and most well-run nations in the world. UAE has to be a top contender, but I still think China wins this contest even if you just look at their debt from the last 10 to 20 years. I just want to give a little shout out to Rwanda, who had the most horrific genocide with neighbors killing neighbors and who have managed to address it in a fairly positive way since then. Their leader, Kagame, is a dictator, but he's had an undeniably positive impact in cooling tribal tensions. Now Rwanda is fairly stable and prosperous in comparison with much of the region, though there's a big question mark over what happens after Kagame. South Korea, China, the former Eastern Bloc countries of the EU. Ireland. Going from divorce and contraception being illegal to abortion rights and marriage equality. EU regional funds and FDI lifting the country out of poverty to one of the wealthiest in Europe. And despite housing crisis and some persistent problems, it may be a hot take but I'd argue that this wealth is strongly felt day to day when living here, in prices, cars, general well-being of people. Very true. There were minimal highways 50 years ago. Same with Qatar. Iran. Woman. Life. Freedom. I was going to say Iran as well. From the Middle East's crown jewel back to the Middle Ages. Iranian women were once envied by the world, now they are pitted. I hope that it changes, and soon. I hope to finally be able to see my homeland someday. Wherever Islam takes hold, society moves backwards. May the world open their eyes and see this as a warning. Yep. Back to the 11th century the country went. 1974 for everyone else in denial. Def China. Yeah, it's definitely China. Just look at Shanghai between 1987 and 2014, link. Other than China, probably the UAE. Singapore. As someone from Singapore, I'd love to say Singapore as well, but it's really not. Singapore was already pretty well off for its time historically due to its location making it a good trading port. Maybe if this question was asked 20 years ago I'd agree, comparatively to other countries 20 years ago. But from between the 1970s till now? Nah. It's gotta be China. Hey, I grew up in the UAE and saw a lot of those changes. My mum worked in the first ever skyscraper there. We went back and it looks like a row house compared to what they have now. South Africa used to be under apartheid and now it's a failed state with an independence movement in the West. Iran, it's sad to see how religion can ruin a country. Okay, here's an answer that's a little different. Northern Ireland. It was a war zone 50 years ago. Surprised I haven't seen Ireland here yet. Ireland went from being a very poor devout Catholic country to one of the richest and most liberal countries in Europe very quickly. Barely voted in favor of divorce in the mid-1990s, ANS voted for marriage equality and abortion rights by landslides in 2015 and 2018. My children live in a totally different Ireland to the one I grew up in. Ireland, Germany, UAE, Iran, Venezuela, any of the former Yugoslavian nations, China, and Vietnam are all good candidates. Germany. Okay, so all the obvious ones, like China, South Korea, Arab countries. But how about Sweden? It has to be South Korea, right? Ireland. 50 years ago gay marriage, abortion, contraception, and divorce were all illegal. We had one of the poorest economies in Europe and the majority of the population were rural farmers who lived in poverty in thatched roof houses. Now, our Prime Minister is openly gay, the church and state have finally been separated, most major American brands have Irish chains, many major tech companies like Intel headquartered in Dublin, and we have one of the highest GDP per capita in the world. Vietnam. It wasn't much of a road either. Venezuela. 50 years ago it had the 5th highest per capita income worldwide, now those that are there still eat grass and somewhere between 30 to 40% of the population has fled. I came here to say this. 50 years ago it was a very strong democratic republic. A bit corrupt but less than most. Everyone had a job and the country was gorgeous. Not anymore. It's China and it's not remotely close. They went from being a largely rural and agricultural nation to the CCP and manufacturing powerhouse it is now over just a matter of decades. Decades ago nobody would have seen China as a global superpower that would rival the US. Me, seeing 50 years and immediately thinking which country changed the most since World War II. I'd say fuck getting older, but I guess it beats the alternative. Given the age of half of these government officials, it is not the US. Absolutely China. Like 50 years ago we just went through famine and the Cultural Revolution, and look at it now, plus everything that happened in between. I'm not very pro-China patriotic, but there's no denying how much progress and advancement have been made, materialistically, and don't look deep into it. My hometown alone reduced its gigantic coal industry for better environment, shifted to tourism industry, erected a city wall, and putted a bigger lake on the city map within just the last 10 years. Spain, Portugal, South Korea, and Taiwan transitioned from fascist military dictatorships to healthier democracies than most of their peers. Republic of Ireland. Plenty in Eastern Europe. Obliterated at the end of WW2, consumed by the USSR, spat out into the EU and grown ever since. I'd go for Poland as a good model perhaps. Yet when I first read this question I thought about Dubai. It's not a country, but it should be the answer anyway. PSA reminder, 50 years ago was 1974. Not 1954. That is all, thank you. Necessary, but unwelcome. You know what? Fuck you. Hello everyone. Thanks for sticking to the end of this video. I really appreciate it. I just wanted to humbly ask you to subscribe to the channel. According to my statistics, 100% of my viewers in the past 28 days are not subscribed. I have always wanted this channel to reach 1000 subscribers, and if you want to support and be a part of that, subscribe. It's free and it's an awesome way to support the channel. Thanks again. Reddit glitch out.